Okay, so now that we have the body more or less where we want it, let's take this and start building the head and kind of feeling out the head. And before I start actually like sculpting on the head, what I like to do is check my proportions to make sure that they're matching the concept and that everything's just feeling right. So what I do is I actually do a snapshot, and if you're using a Mac, it's Control Command Shift 4, and you can actually just click and drag a snapshot of your screen, just like that. And if you're using a Windows machine, you can actually just hit the Windows button and then type in, I think it's trim or clip or something, trim tool, and it's just, or your clipping tool, whatever, and you can do the same thing. So anyways, I've got this. So let's do some quick measurements. So if we have her, she's about, let's say that's her head size. And she's not standing straight up, but we can kind of, she's close to it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I guess this is 5, 6, and almost 7. So like 6.5 to 7. Lower the opacity, kind of see where it is. So it's close to 7 heads high is how big her head is. So now we can just quickly do that on this model and check, those proportions out real quick. Just from the top of the head to the bottom of the head. This isn't, this is so rough, but this is just head size, basically. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's a little small. So just in Photoshop, I'm going to just see what it looks like if I make just the head bigger. Just a titch bigger, just to kind of see more or less where I have to do that. I just want the head. Sloppy Photoshop job. Anyways, and just to resize this, I'm using Control T or Command T, and moving that pivot point to the bottom of the head. Oops. And then by holding Shift and Alt or Option, I'm just going to scale it up just a little bit. Hit Enter. You can see the before and after. So just a tiny bit bigger. It's not that big. Now I can check the proportions again. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6.5. We can check the opacity. Yeah, that's closer. This gives me the idea of how much bigger I need to make it in ZBrush. I can also just check quickly the proportions of everything else while I'm here. And this is kind of the stuff that I'm focusing on, is like this ratio, this should be more or less like if this arm were to go in, it hit the belly button, the forearm to the fingers. This should go more or less in the middle of the calf, which is doing, is this the same size as this. And it's pretty close to it, which is what I want. You know, everything else seems to be fitting really well. She might have a little bit longer legs in this, but I kind of like the longer leg look. So I'm going to go with that. Again, you know, this is just some aesthetic choices I'm making. So, but this gives me a good idea of like, oh, okay, so it's probably like 20% bigger, the head. So I go into ZBrush, and now I'm going to scale this head. Now to switch subtools like this, I'm just holding Alt or Option in Mac, and just tapping on it, and it will switch. And you can, if I take off the color, then you can see. So now I'm just working on that. Gonna do some quick softening of this just a bit. There we go. Kind of bugging me a little bit. Anyways, back to the head. Scale this up. About 20%. They're just going to eyeball it. And I could do a see-through to kind of, oh, I guess I can't do see-through when I'm in full screen mode, but just switch over, you know. If I do this, I can kind of eyeball like where the head's going to. If it's too big. The side of the head's going about to the side of the chest. And that's pretty close. You know, it's maybe a little bit bigger, but that actually works because it could be a little bit bigger. So now that I have my head size, I can actually start sculpting on it. And for those of you who have taken my tutorials in the past, I've had a pretty good system of making a real, you know, taking a Z-sphere and making a base mesh out of that Z-sphere to make a head. I'm going to do it a little bit differently. You know, that technique is really more for beginners to learn how to put the planes of the face, which I'm real, you know, which is super important to find an appeal. Secondly, it helps focus on the big shapes and not get caught up in the detail. So all those things are important, but I'm going to do this way. This is just a little bit, it's a little bit quicker, but it is a lot more advanced because you have to know and understand relationships between the face, like the facial planes. You want to make sure that you're still keeping cheekbone areas, like these things. It's a little bit more difficult and a lot more eyeballing, but it still gets the same results. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to turn off the body. Let's save a new one of these. And now we're going to sculpt the head. Okay, so let's start sculpting this head. So I've kind of got a rough proportional set. I'm going to duplicate this just so I keep the size, because it's going to change quite a bit. So what I want to do is first just get the simplest form of the head. Let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. Bring Photoshop back over. So I want to break this head up into kind of the core essentials. I'm just going to draw on top of this so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So you've got kind of the base head with the cheekbone or the jawbone and the cheekbone, and basically this is what I want to make first. Is just a simple, you know, you have no nose. It's just, this is just flat, more or less. Like if you were looking at this, this is in 3D. Like this is the kind of the jaw plane and the side of the head plane. So you want to make this first, and then on top of that, you're gonna I'm gonna do an insert of, you know, what the nose will be. We'll kind of figure out the nose. I mean, this is a really bad drawing. I'm not, again, not great at sketching. Anyway, so we'll figure out kind of the nose placement, and we'll already have kind of the eye cavities in there. You know, these will be pushed back just a little bit with the bridge of the nose kind of coming out. And then we'll add in, you know, the eyes with the eyelids. Next, we'll put the placements for the eyebrows. And then lastly, we'll make her actually with an open mouth, so we can close it later. Yeah, she looks like her. She's got just that top lip. This isn't important what this looks like. Anyways, we'll do that, and put a placement for an ear too. But these will all be separate things. Like the nose will be separate. The eye, where we're putting like the eyelids, will be separate. The lips will be separate at first, and then once we kind of place them all where we want, we'll Dynamesh them together. But essentially, we want to make this shape, you know, where we're getting, you know, we're defining kind of that forehead plane, we're defining this cheek, the jaw plane, the side of the head plane, and then this facial mask plane. And we can hint at where, you know, the nose bridge is, you know, because we'll have this actually pull back. You know, that's why it's got that concave feeling to it. But mainly we're just trying to get this shape in the roughest form. You know, top down, he would probably look more like this. That's the front of the head. So make sure you have still, it's not flat, it's not completely flat, it's got curve to it, some curve to it. And that's our goal, is to get to this, and then we add on the individual pieces, like the nose, the eyes, the mouth, and then we close it all up and make it all pretty again. Okay, let's go back in and let's start making that shape. This is pretty standard, like when making characters, is I very, very rarely get a full 3D turnaround, you know, a full like front, back, side, 3/4. That almost never happens, at least what I've experienced anymore. Like it just doesn't happen very much. See kind of the information that I'm working with. I'm just going to get more or less the rough. So I'm going to change the perspective real quick, and the reason I did that, I'm going to do that is when watching Frank Zing's tutorial, apparently him and Rafael Grassetti, kind of, which is another tutorial that I've watched and is really good as well. They've kind of figured out that the perspective, a good like medium ground for the perspective. And then, so to change that, we go to draw, and then the view angle is at default 50 at 50. So he changed that to 30, and I've found that actually helps really well, especially when bringing it in knowing that I'm going to render this in Keyshot or another program, this perspective is a little bit more realistic to what I want. So set that to 30, and now I can continue on this. So as you can see, we're going to be jumping in and out of time lapse. I'm speeding up to about 3 times speed, and this is just so, one, I'm going to be teaching principles of what we're going to be trying to accomplish. So you'll always get the information of why and what we're doing. But just so you don't get bored out of your mind, I'm going to speed it up till we get to different sections. So you get a full understanding of what I'm doing as you're watching instead of just waiting for me to finish the next step. So let's continue. And the things that I'm thinking about are still that, going back to that shape language that I talked about earlier is, there's, if you guys don't know who Sam Nielsen is, he is an incredible concept artist who specializes in lighting, and he did a really good, he's got a website, a blog, and he did this little article about character design, and he drew a character and he put her in 3 different costumes, and he was talking about how your goal of your character is that she could change costume and still remain the same character no matter the costume. Like, that was a secondary thing to explain who she was, and that's kind of the goal for this. Is I want her attitude and her kind of hardcoreness about her to show through my shape language. She's going to have a little bit more, because she's going to be a little bit harsher, not harsher, but like have a little bit more attitude. She's going to have a little bit more edges to her. Things are going to be a little bit more angular. And so those are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm kind of roughing out this head. So my main goal for this segment is I'm just laying out landmarks where their eye cavity will be, where the mouth will be, and where the nose will land. So that's what I'm kind of roughing out in this segment. Now I'll start adding a little bit more detail where the eye cavity would be, where the cheekbone would be. I'm trying to, keep in mind that there's should be like a skeleton structure underneath. So if I keep that in mind, the rest will be, the appeal will come knowing that, start to pinch some of these, where the temple is, kind of define some of these things like the facial mass plane, which is this area, just full on. Maybe define the chin a little bit more. I'm going to pull this back just a bit because I'm going to add that in when I make the mouth. Really, I just want a smooth plane across these features. And I want kind of the flow to go up and over the nose, that'll wrap around. So the highlight will be carried across, this way. Bring that, everything back a little bit more. start defining, you know, that jaw bone. And then I just kind of soften things out again. You know, this right here I want. Like I really, really like that part of the cheekbone. That she's got a little bit more design to her. So I want to kind of emphasize that. And then maybe lessen how much that forehead is going to be. Maybe just roll that back a little bit more. And again, most of this will probably change like once I get the eyes in there and the nose in there and Dynamesh everything together and then close the mouth. But it's good to at least try to get as close as you can sooner. Okay, so now let's go ahead. I'm going to delete the lower on this. Let me go up one more in subdivisions. And so now you can kind of see that I have my base kind of figured out. You know, everything is rounded. I'm going to flatten just that a little bit. You can see the planes I'm starting to emphasize as well. The nose bridge planes even there at this point. So everything's kind of there more or less. I just need to start defining things. So now let's go ahead and we'll add a nose. And I'm going to use my QMesh insert brush again, hit M, and I'm going to use the detailed sphere for this. So this will be more or less the what we're trying to shape with the nose. So just bring this out. And with my move brush, I'm just going to pull this in and start shaping it to her shape. She's got this cool triangular nose. It's not super tiny and or dainty, but I don't want it to look too clownish either. But I am gonna start as well, like defining the nose. Has a few planes. Like let's draw this out real quick. So thinking about the nose and the way that it's constructed, you kind of have the ball of your nose, the bridge of your nose, and then these kind of nasal flaps. But the planes you want to think of are like the top plane. This can even be like a plane here is like the front, and then you have these two outer planes that kind of wedge up. And then the other plane that's like the top of the nasal flaps, folds or whatever. And those are the things you want to define. And then you could even have like a flat plane here as well. So you have like one more plane. But the core of it is kind of this. And this is what we want. And she's got this. She kind of has this shape that we want to make. And these three planes in the front, the main plane for the top of the nose, and then kind of a soft plane around here that maybe goes like this. And then you add in, your nostrils. Right. Okay. So with that in mind, that's what we're trying to achieve. Okay, oops. Okay, just go a little bit wider on top. And see, like, keeping it such a low poly, I'm almost defining those planes without even doing anything. Pull that in. And you're gonna get that good swoop of the nose. You can kind of see where the nostrils will be. I kind of want that swoop in the front too, where it kind of goes up, oops, and down, back down. So like this line. So that's what I want. I don't want the nostrils to be super apparent either, so I'll just give a place for them right now and just try to make sure I have, you know, the ball of that nose there, soften, you know, where the nasal flaps will go back into the bridge. Go taper in and then taper back out. Maybe looks a little bit too high. Kind of want to squish it down a little bit and maybe pull it, just stubify it a little bit too. I want it, you know, obviously this is going to look different a little bit from the concept, but I do want to keep like the integrity of like Justin's style in there. You know, I had a vision for what I wanted the character to look like when I contacted him, and he's got it. You know, we're trying to share that same vision of what we want it to look like in the end. So I want to make sure that I'm representing his style in this. Okay, that. Now let's go ahead and add the eyes. I'm just appending spheres to this. Let's place them like right under the head. We can rename this eye. I'm not going to really make the eye too detailed right now. I'm just going to use a basic sphere for now, and then later I will detail out the eye. But I'm trying to focus on the head, so do that. Pretty big. Scale it down. Turn off perspective for this. Scale it down a little bit more. She's got pretty big eyes, so I want that to be there. Turn on transparency. I also want the eyes angled, so the top of the eyelid is kind of has this angled out like so, more like almost a 45-degree angle. This is just more natural that way. That's we'll try that placement out for now. Okay, so now that I have the eye in there, what I'm going to do is kind of push back this stuff and just try to finesse this a little bit more, and bring in the corner of that eye in just a bit. And then maybe bring this out. Move that up again. Even make those eyes just a tinge bigger too. Whoops. Now I'm going to start fixing kind of like, kind of lost a little bit of love here. So I'm going to push, just push these things back in. Making sure that I'm trying to look at this from all angles. Soften up those temples just a bit. And then to kind of finish the eye, what I do is I use this insert curve 2 brush, and I actually go ahead and I place that. Let's make sure that's looking right though. Okay, so with this, and because I don't have any subdivisions, I can use this. My head's looking just a little too square. Sorry, things are just bugging me. I'm never going to get to it. Okay, so now the 2 brush. I do a couple things. If I go to the stroke menu, just tap that icon and it will dock it to the side. First, I just go to the size curve modifier, size, tap on the curve fall off, flip this, and then I do a little subtle arc to it. So it's just, it goes thick to a little bit thinner. I'll do the same thing for the mouth, for the lips, but I'll exaggerate that more. This, I just want like a little kind of subtle fall off. So again, this curve is, the thickness of it is decided by how large your draw size is. So if I was to bring that draw size up and tap on it, it would be thicker. Smaller is obviously going to be smaller. When the cursor turns blue, that's when I can edit that curve. So you just hover over the line and the cursor will turn blue. And then you can have full control over editing it. And then the last thing that I do before I start is turn on lock start. So this way, when I do my inside corner and start manipulating it, that first point's not going to move at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and I start with the inside corner. She's got these really big eyes. And I'm going to have just a little bit of a slant, so it's inside here and then almost the same distance. There's just a tiny slant where the end corner will be. I'm just pulling this out. Because this is like the upper ridge of the eye, is what it is. And bring that corner in just a bit more too. And then I want to get like a good eye shape. So I'm trying to do a balance of like stylize, like have an angle here, an angle that comes across, and then a slight curve back into it to keep the design of the eye intact. Then just pull it out a little bit more so it goes in to the head. To do that, if you're not familiar with this, just hover over the end of the line of the curve, and then you'll see that little red marker kind of snap to it. That means that you can extend your current curve. And just draw out what you need it to be. Again, just kind of shaping the overall shape of this eye and making sure that it's kind of touching the inner eye. And that's good for now, for that. Now I'll do the bottom eyelid. So I have those. Tap to end your curve. And now I'll just do some subtle like changes because there's, I want that line to be a little bit cleaner. There's still a little bit of an angle, which is good. Okay, so now I'll just finish off kind of the top of the eyelids. Selecting this, and with my mask lasso, I'm going to mask off the top part of that eyelid, or the bottom part, whatever. I'm going to mask off the top part of the eyelid, because that's the part that I'm going to extend, and then invert that selection. And then just with my move brush, I'm going to pull these eyelids back up into the head. Just like so. And this is going to create a really nice, when I Dynamesh this all together, this can create a really nice connection. That. I'm going to do the same with the bottom piece. Then lastly, I'm just going to do with the J cut brush is sharpen the corners of the eyes, like where the front of the eyelids are. Do that to the front and the bottom. I'm also going to try to have a taper to these, so maybe it's a little bit thicker coming out and a little bit thinner where it meets the eye at the corners, just so we're staying away from parallels again. Okay, that's enough detail for that. And I know it's not looking, quite like the concept yet. Mainly I just need to mesh with all the landmarks there, and then if it's close enough, like I can modify that, once it's done. So let's make the mouth. The mouth, as I just push in some polygons, do a nice quick push in. And then I'm going to use this curved tube tool again, and this time change the modifier so there's a bigger drop off, so it goes from really thick to thin. And she, normally you have lips that kind of do the M. It looks like she has just one tall crest for her front lips. So I'm going to make sure I try to stay true to that. Just draw the lips out, pull them into the corners. Change that size so it's a little bit thicker. Whoops. I'd rather have the ends, be really smooth. So I'll fix that. This part when I get to it. But I just want this to be in there. Go into the corners. Maybe extend that just a titch so I can have a little bit more in the corners. Because this top lip actually kind of folds over the bottom lip. And then we'll do the bottom lip the same, just draw that in there. Tap to accept it, and then now I'm going to kind of use my inflate to modify this so it reflects that a little bit more. And my move brush, of course, to move things back into place. Same with this. I'm going to use my inflate brush to give it the volume that I want. And now I'm going to start, finding that ridge, because you've got this ridge on the top of your lips. Just define that a little bit, and then with my trim brush, I'm actually going to define, it's got kind of two planes. One that's like at maybe 30-degree angle, and the one that's a sharper degree. That kind of makes up that lip. She does have that ball in the front of her lips. And then what I do is I mask off the important section. and then pull this back up into the head, and that kind of gives the muzzle define the lips, the bottom lip a bit more. And this one doesn't do it as much. It's more just on the sides where the oops. Kind of create this lip presence. Anyways, things are starting to come together. Still looks really bad, but I'll just start trying to define where some things are. And the reason why I model it with the mouth open is so when I dynamesh this and then remesh it, that it's gonna, I can then like take the mouth and actually close it, and it's gonna have that natural occlusion that you get when you close a mouth instead of, you know, when it's you dynamesh something with the mouth closed, it fuses those lips shut, and then it just doesn't look quite right. So that's the reason why I'm doing this. I'm going to go ahead and maybe just add the ears real quick. I'm going to just push some of these things around. You know, just trying to keep that shape still. If I was, you know, really worried about time, I would probably start with like a base mesh head that I have. That's just low poly, that has the core features that I have. But when I'm creating something new, and especially for like learning purposes, I highly recommend that you build your own head, just so you start understanding the anatomy and, you know, find out what looks good, what doesn't look good, you know, those kind of things. Because that's how you learn, is, you know, you make your mistakes, and then find out what works for you, what doesn't. Okay, let's go ahead and add the ear real quick. I'll just do another insert mesh. This time I'm going to choose the cylinder. I'll just throw one here. Squish it down. Rotate it on its side. Pull that into the head, kind of size it and place it between the top of the eye and the bottom of the nose. And now, once I've got the rough shape, I will just kind of mush this to make more of an ear shape. You know, she's not going to really have ears, And you're not going to see him at least. But I still like to add them in case like I decide to do something else with her head. And again, I'll pinch the tops so they kind of taper once they meet the head, flare out away from the head, and then they taper again once they meet the head again, to stay away from parallels. Okay, let's save that. Okay, so I think that's kind of all the landmarks that we're going to need. What I'm going to do now is Dynamesh this stuff together so I can start refining all that detail. One thing that I'm going to do real quick is just duplicate, or do just mirror this eye. Let's do a quick save. Again, whoops. Ooh. Let's do. So I do my Z plugin, transpose master or subtool master, then mirror. I want it to merge into a one subtool. There we go. Turn on symmetry so if we ever need to get into it. Right now it's not really looking very feminine. That's okay. I'm not worried about that at this moment. Okay. Okay, just making sure some proportions are, everything's there that I want it. There's a little back piece of the ear that I want to add. So I'm just going to do that with a sphere. Do my detailed sphere, I guess. And then just move that into place. And then I'm just going to clip the remaining part of that off. So it's just that you're seeing, and it's just going to be part of the back of the ear. Most people won't even see it. So that's okay for now. So now let's Dynamesh this. Now that I have more or less all the parts that I want. So I'll Dynamesh that. Maybe at 300, let's see what that does. Perfect, that's the exact amount of detail that I want. Now I just instantly delete everything. No, let's go quite a bit higher. Let's go just a tiny bit higher. Yeah, let's do that. Let's start with this. So it's still rather low in polys, almost 60,000. Yup. And I'm just going to start kind of rounding off some things. I kind of like the way this ear kind of has some points to it though. So I'm going to keep that. Bring some of this in and just start defining some of these areas just a little bit more. I'm going to do a close holes on it too. Sometimes Dynamesh will leave holes open. And I don't want her to have a very prominent nose, like a bridge plane, just a little subtle one. So I'll smooth some of this stuff back and then kind of define the parts that I want. The eye kind of has it kind of does a concave just above, like right here in the eye, where there's less eye meat, and then it kind of comes over and there's like a kind of a fold of eye meat that I want to kind of hint at. So there'll be less of a bridge there, I guess. Less of a sharp angle. Just pulling the temple out just a little bit. I'm going to push that back because I just want substance there. Now for the kind of the muzzle area, you know, that it starts at the top of the nose, like the nasal flaps kind of wraps around the nose. I don't want it to be super apparent, just a little bit, so I cut it in really deep, so it's going to fold around the mouth, and I just smooth that back so it just has a little hint of it. If you have it too apparent, she'll look too old or too young. Most likely too old, as wrinkles are more apparent. So I just want to kind of smooth some of this stuff back. But a lot of the work I've already done on this, so it's just kind of, you know, refining and defining, especially with like the nose area. I want that, you know, that highlight that you're seeing here to really wrap up and around the eye. It's maybe doing it just a little bit too much, but you can always bring that back out. Oh, I'm kind of smoothing away that inner eye, and I don't want to do that. I'm just adding a little bit more substance, like around the bottom fold. I'm trying to be careful not to smooth the edge of the eye, because right now it has an edge of the eye, but if you smooth it, it's going to kind of lose that. I don't want to have to build that back in. Start putting in some of this, the nostril back in. edge just a little bit wider. Time to switch materials. You know, make sure that you're switching materials because they will show you different aspects. So I'm kind of losing those planes. Oh boy. So I'm going to try to define them just again. Little bits at a time that I'm building this up. Now that we have kind of some definition for the mouth, like it's already mostly taken shape, I'm just gonna again refine it. I'll pull up that lip so it's a little bit thicker. Probably just a little bit too thick. It's okay. And just refining that shape just a little bit too. Thinning out this bottom lip. Gonna pull out that chin just a bit too and push this back in so it's a little bit sharper. That edge there just a little bit. Just throw a quick little smooth on the back here so everything's just getting polished out. I'll throw a really sharp edge on this stuff and then just smooth it back so it's not catching too much detail. Throw my perspective back on. Just just refine the mouth just a little bit. I'll get more detail after I kind of get all the core parts of this in. I probably could have Dynameshed this at a little bit higher resolution, as we're kind of losing stuff in the mouth area, but that's, you know, it's okay. I can sculpt this back in. Try to emphasize the shape of those lips just a titch more. And I'm going to round off the back of this so it doesn't, you don't, you know, if you're working with edges and things like that, you don't ever want like two edges together. It just doesn't feel super great when you do it. So if I have one edge sharp, the other edge next to it will probably be round. And that's where I find my balance. You know, it's all about balance and like design, so you kind of have to pick and choose what you want. So for the ear, let's just do that real quick too, and then we'll keep refining this. I'm going to use my pen mask, take my focal shift up so there's a harder edge. Let's draw out where that ear cavity is going to be. And push that in. Maybe actually use my move tool and pull the inside in so it looks like it's actually going into the ear a little bit. And I'm going to subdivide this up a little bit just so now I have more to work with and start refining the ear a bit more. Just add in, I'm going to Dynamesh this a little higher now. I need to go a little bit higher. Okay. So now I've got just the geometry that I need to work with, and I'm going to pull out kind of this inner bit of the ear. Just with my move brush, because I just want more or less the outside part of it. I'm not going to give a lot of detail to the ear, but just enough. to see that something's there. You're not even going to see the ear anyways. So I'm not really paying too much attention to what I want, but just so you can see kind of my approach to doing the ear. Again, like if I have a hard edge, I want a soft edge on the opposite, on this other side of it. So this will be softer. I'm just going to pull this out. Try to maintain the similar thickness. Okay, so I'm gonna try to just finish this head real quick by refining my shapes. So go ahead, watch kind of the process that I'm doing to refine these shapes. It's exactly what I've done before, just putting in detail, focusing on silhouette, focusing on the landmarks, focusing on the planes of the face. And we'll just get this done so we can continue on. Okay, so the head is, let's say it's set for now. I know the proportions still aren't what I quite want, but it has all the necessary landmarks that I need to be able to project the detail. So what I want to do now, we're going to end this video, and then we're going to do part 2 of the head section, where we will cut out the mouth hole a little bit more, and Z-remesh it, and then actually get all the proportions exactly how we want them. So let's end this video, and we will continue on.